Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And one of the things that is tied into our personal power and our human dignity is our self-image. It's such an important part of who we are, how we feel about ourselves, and how we interact with others. And that includes our body image. Today's guest is Dina Marie. She is an entrepreneur, has owned several successful businesses, and is the author of the book, My Fat Pants Don't Fit, a mostly true story of divorce, weight loss, and finding self-love. Dina, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You have a truly remarkable story. And you have packed a whole lot into your short life because you're really not that old.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I just turned 39 this past October.
Oh, well, happy birthday, a little bit
Thank
late.
you.
So tell your story about your own personal experience with body image, self-image, how you felt about yourself, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah. So I think the first question I get about the book is how mostly true is this story? And it's all 100% true. I threw that caveat in there as a joke for my mother because she's always like, that didn't happen on a Tuesday. It happened on a Friday or something like that. So I did it as a caveat in case, as you're remembering back things, sometimes you remember in a little different order. So the story is all true. So back about 9 years ago, I was moving from my hometown of the suburbs of Chicago to North Carolina. And I was super excited about this move. I was moving for work and I had the absolute lowest, worst day of my whole life. And it revolved around me not being able to fit in an airplane seat. And I think that's something that either people have experienced or have been close to experiencing or experiencing something that to them is at that level. And so I struggled for the first 6 years, and you think, wow, 6 years, she really should have got it together. But it goes by so fast, So I really struggled with my weight from the time I was 18, but 6 years into living in North Carolina, when I had started going to therapy, and I ultimately decided to do weight loss surgery. The biggest misconception I think about weight loss surgery is that people think it's very much the easy way out of life. And as somebody who fights food addiction, sugar addiction, who exercises constantly, I can tell you it's definitely not the easy way out of the situation. So I followed this journey and I ended up losing about 140 pounds. I was a size 24 at my largest. I am about a size 12 now. And I put some goals in place for myself. I decided at that time too that I was living in an unhappy marriage. My ex-husband's a very nice person, but we had no romance. So I started dating, fell in love, very abruptly fell out of love. So that story's in there. And really actually discovered through all of that what self-love was, how to cherish myself, and then, continue on this journey. It's not like you lose the weight and you're just done, right? Mm-hmm. So I continuously follow this journey. And, right now, I think we all have some quarantine pounds on us. And, so I ran the Chicago Marathon remotely, virtually in North Carolina this year. But after that, I struggled just like everyone else, picking myself up, getting to the gym again, having those goals. So what I was hoping to do with telling my story is saying, it's not easy. It's not perfect. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. I'm somebody who struggled, and hopefully somebody can find some way to relate with my story in in their own life and be able to use some skills or tools that I put together for them to help with their goals.
So I just kind of wanted to stop you right there and talk about that a little bit more. I wanted to actually go back and backtrack because basically when I first saw your book and saw the title of the book, my fat pants don't fit. And I thought, well, good for her. I had a completely different idea. I thought that's a good thing. She put on her fat pants and they were too loose. And so I didn't realize until I read your book. And starting on that Chicago morning, where you were getting ready, packing all your clothes and getting ready to move to North Carolina. First of all, it was for a job. It was a wonderful opportunity. You were so excited because you couldn't wait to have a new life. And, you're going to have this wonderful house and have great parties and wonderful friends and lose weight and do all these fantastic things. And it just didn't start out that way, did it?
No, it's funny that you see the title like that because I wrote the book, had it edited, rewrote stuff, did a second edit, did a publish, and then like 2 months later was doing a podcast with my publisher. And I all of a sudden was like, oh my goodness, my fat pants don't fit could be because they're too loose. That just shows how people's brains work. I struggle to live not in the negative. I never, even when I wrote the title, it was my fat pants don't fit because they were so skin tight. And I talk a lot about these pants in the story. Mm-hmm. And we all have these pants, these jeans, right? They're actually still in my closet to this day, but they're your go-to pants. When you've had a little extra something, they're always going to fit. They feel good. They're comfy. Maybe don't look the greatest, but they'll get you to Target. And then they didn't fit. And so it was so funny because we were doing this thing one day and all of a sudden I was like, because they're too big. And it was just so random because they are way too big now. And it never crossed my mind that that book could be viewed as like a positive title. Mm-hmm. So it's funny that you thought of it that way.
But as I was reading then, and there you were in that airplane seat, mm-hmm. I just wanted to crawl through the book, go back in time, put my arms around you and say, it's going to be okay. But you made that pain, you described it so well. I just wanted to give you a hug. And the flight attendant obviously was very compassionate too. And she was very sweet.
Yes, it was a very tough situation to be in, right? Because I think in a way I had a weird reverse body image. Like I would look in the mirror and see what I thought was a healthy looking, attractive person and stuff. So to be faced with that, where in the book and in life, I had to have a seatbelt extender. For me, everyone has their own thoughts, but for me, it was my lowest low. And I just, and there was so much, if you catch it in the book, there's so much confusion. I literally was starting to argue with my ex-husband, my husband at the time, to give me my seatbelt because they had to be mismatched because I couldn't get mine to fit. And it never occurred to me it didn't fit because I was too big for the seat. And that was the moment where I feel like everything just fell apart. And it was also my 30th birthday that weekend. Mm-hmm. So it was supposed to be this joyous time and, going to pick out a house to move into and 30th birthday and all this stuff. And that is literally how the trip started. And it was a very painful, very ugly cry kind of
you're
trip,
good you're really, really good at describing the ugly cry.
Some people are beautiful Miss America criers. Mm-hmm. That's not me. I'm red and puffy faced and snot dripping down my nose and I get a migraine and I look that way for hours. I'm like past it, but you could still see it on my face. So I don't do well hiding my cry face. So
now you're in North Carolina and you're ready to start this wonderful new life in a place that you really thought you would love. And that didn't quite work out that way either, did it?
So, it's interesting when I talk to people from North Carolina, I think you think of like, and maybe North Carolina, Florida, Arizona, those types of warm weather places, California. People tend to wear less clothes. It's warmer here, right? And so I'm used to, yes, Chicago had very warm summers and stuff like that, but they weren't very long in Chicago. You could kind of sneak by under the radar. And I always was fortunate enough to have a job in the air conditioning. So I was kind of going from air conditioned car to air conditioned office. I could kind of get past. And our summer in North Carolina is really like April or May through October to November. I mean, sometimes it's 70 degrees in January. And at that moment, I just thought, I'm too fat to live here. Wow. I'm too fat for North Carolina. I was here several years before going to a beach. And I only went because one of my friends came in town. It was a lot. This is a lot to manage through. So I know for someone else, they might think, well, how can you be too fat? And it's just, you're a big sweaty mess, and I don't wear shorts. And that's a personal choice. Anyone at any size can wear what they feel comfortable in. But for me, I don't feel comfortable in that, or did not feel comfortable in that. So I'd be wearing heavy jeans, because I guess they only make jeans for plus size people in the world's thickest fabric. And I would be in that, and I would just be sweaty and gross. And, you know, I was miserable, right? After 6 months, I wanted to go back to Illinois, and my family said, no, stay, give it a chance. And now it's been, this Christmas was 9 years. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I found my way, but it's still a hard thing to process when you feel like everyone is beachy waves and bikini tops. And it's not really like that. I think it's just that way in my view of it.
In your perception.
Exactly.
So what turned things around?
So the best thing I ever did, and it's a really interesting conversation to have with people, there's so much conversation around therapy that some people are like, oh God, first of all, people are just shocked that I say out loud that I go to therapy. They're like, you shouldn't talk about that. And so, and so there's a lot of like conversation about therapy, and should you do it and stuff? And, you know, I was talking to my mom one time, and she says, you know, the great thing about therapy is you can literally just talk about yourself for an hour and somebody will sit and listen. You can get it all up. And so after having a little bit of a nervous breakdown one day driving in the car, and my mom said, you need to go see a therapist. And I was like, I hate it here. I just want to leave. And so I went and I saw, and I was like, kind of went in with my grumpy face, and I was like, she has one chance, and if she doesn't do it right, I'm walking out this door, you know. And I had searched online for a therapist. I didn't want anyone who's going to be in a suit, or, you know, looks too stuffy. Like, I wanted somebody who, I'm very casual, so somebody who is very casual like me. And so I read through all these profiles and tried to pick someone. So I picked someone out, and, you know, so I was like, she's not going to crack this book. And so kind of went in with a little bit of an attitude, and she picks me up in the lobby, and we walk into her office, and there's a giant street poster of Chicago in there. And I was like, oh my gosh. All of a sudden I was like, blah, let me tell you everything. I just, you know, she was this redhead in these jeans and kind of dressy sneakers and stuff. And she was casual, and she was fun. And I instantly felt like I knew her forever. And the Chicago poster was just kind of sitting over my shoulder the whole time. And I was like, okay, my home's with me, so I'm comfortable. And I would see her every week for well over a year and a half. And then we moved to like every other week and stuff. And now all these years later, I still see her maybe once every month or 2, 3 months if something comes up in my life. And to me, that was the changing point, right? Because I watch all these weight loss shows. You can tell me not to have McDonald's. You can tell me don't eat candy. You can do this, you can do that. But if you don't get to the root of like what's causing your weight, because usually there's something causing it, you're not going to get better, right? You might temporarily get better, but you're not permanently going to get better. Because for a lot of people, you eat to cope with stress, or you're sad, or you're happy. Or for me, that's what it was: happy, sad, stress, whatever it was. I turned to food for everything. And so I had to learn other coping mechanisms.
One of the things that I loved that you talked about in your book, when you went to the therapist and she gave you some very real life type of techniques or strategies to be able to cope with your stress or, you know, anxiety or whatever you were feeling, because she would tell you to think of other things. I knew a therapist one time who used to tell her clients to put a rubber band on their wrist, and every time they had a negative thought, just snap that rubber band. And to me, that just didn't sound like a very practical strategy or technique to help. But what she told you was actually really, really pretty effective. And that was simply to think of the things that made you happy.
Yeah, or in redirect, right? Even if I couldn't think of happy things. So that stemmed from, I was talking to her and I would sit in meetings and I would lose focus at work because I was so worried in the meeting about everything else that I shouldn't have been worried about. I was worried that I didn't fit in the chair because a lot of times I didn't. Things were hanging over and things like that. I would worry about, if we were having a lunch meeting, if people were looking how much food was on my plate. My boss at the time always had a candy dish in the middle of the table, and I would look to see, I would wait for someone else to grab candy. And I spent so much time and energy thinking about, I'm too fat for the chair. How much candy did I have? Did someone else eat candy? Should I do this now? I would not even pay attention. And I would end up leaving these meetings with almost like an anxiety. I would never really consider myself an anxious person, but after talking to her, kind of figuring that out. And so what she said was, when I would start thinking about that I was too fat for the chair, go pick something in the room. We talked about the lamp, focus on the lamp and start thinking about things about the lamp. Cause it was really hard for me to even come up with a positive self-talk at this point. That wasn't even anywhere remotely on the table. And I would say, okay, I wonder how much that lamp cost. I wonder how big the lamp is. I wonder if it came from a different part of the building. And it was the stupidest stuff. But then all of a sudden I was thinking about the lamp, and I had forgotten that I didn't fit in the chair. And then somebody would say something and I was actually involved in the meeting again. And so it was this redirect, and for me, the final breaking point was I was in a company meeting, and they make college auditorium chairs very small. And so I'm sitting in there and I don't fit into the chair, and I'm trying to focus on my CEO talking. And I'm like, I wonder where he got his shirt. I'm trying to do my techniques and stuff. And that was the moment where I had to get up because I was getting a pain in my leg. And I went to the bathroom, and because the chair was so small, the screw on the chair had dug into my leg and started bruising it, and my leg was bleeding through my jeans. And that was the moment, that was the final moment. And I called her and I said, I have to make a change today, because I was trying to use those coping mechanisms and the redirect. And that to me I was actually heavier than I was on the plane. And it was a different kind of sadness, because on the plane, it was very, everyone could see. I was getting handed a seatbelt extender. People see what's happening. It's not like you're, in some mansion on a plane. It's so small. Everyone could hear, even if you're whispering, can I have a seatbelt extender? They can't, everyone's in your business. This was a very different type of private. And that was the final breaking point for me, was that bloody and bruised leg on that chair.
So now, even before the surgery though, you were exercising, you were running, right?
Yeah. So I had started running years before. I had started running, and I was doing sprint triathlons. My mom had been a smoker for about 20 or 25 years at that point. And probably she was about a size 14, and she had just one day quit smoking, got on a treadmill, couldn't even go 2 minutes. And all of a sudden, obviously my mom's 23 years older than me. She had me when she was 23. And I'm out of breath standing there watching her do a 5K. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a weird way to be looking at this. Is I'm much younger. I'm literally just standing there waiting for her to finish. And I'm out of breath from just walking from the start line to the finish line and stuff. And so I decided, like a little girl trying to fit into her mom's shoes or wear her mom's makeup, I wanted to be just like my mom. So I begrudgingly started doing 5Ks and sprint triathlons. My mom is an Ironman now. She's a 2-time full Ironman, 4-time half Ironman. And I hated it. It was miserable. Every step was like she was literally trying to get me to smile the whole 5K. And I literally flipped her off at one time, was like, just leave me alone. Leave me alone. I don't want to see you. Right. I mean, and I love my mom very much. She's my best friend, but at that moment, it was just the worst experience. And I kept doing it because I didn't know what else to do. I tried every diet. I tried eating, because a lot of people say it's 80% diet, 20% exercise. I was like, I need to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
So I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. If I have not stressed that enough, hated it.
Yeah. You made that perfectly clear.
Right.
And you even said in the book, you were describing something that there was your mom and she's just running along with this big old smile on her face. And it was like, you had never smiled when you ran.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, just turn around. And like, there would be times where she would finish a race and she would come back and get me. And that was like, are you kidding me? Don't double run, So she would have, because she was trying to make her time. So she would go and make her time and then come back and get me. And it was very often I was one of the last people. And when I say I was running, I was walking. I mean, in my mind, my feet were moving like I was running, but it was like a 19 or 20 minute mile. This is like a snail's pace, And so the stroller people were actually really fast, but the stroller people had passed me. The walkers had passed me. Everybody had passed me. And I was often the last person, which is a whole nother mind game. So,
but the spectators would cheer you on.
They would. And I think it took me a really long time to view that as a positive, right? I think what I heard in my head for a really long time was like, come on, fatty, you can do it, and it took me a really long time to realize people were being nice and not being cruel, because people tend to be really cruel. And I think, looking at my bibs and my medals and, over my running and sprint triathlon time, I've completed well over 100 races. Wow. And between 5Ks, 10Ks, 3 half marathons. And this year in October, I finished the Chicago Marathon, which was, my mom flew in from Chicago to run with me in North Carolina. It was just the two of us, and no crowds, no cheers, no finish line. And, a lot of what drives you in races is that. So to go from that to wanting to never go past 3 miles to finishing 26.2 it's a big deal.
So I just have got to ask, do you still hate it, or do you sometimes smile when you're running?
So it was really weird. I think for so long with running, I had these maybe unrealistic goals, or I don't even know how to describe it. It was just, I had so much pressure on myself. Mm. And in 2019, for the first time ever, I was pulled off a run course at mile 10.5 for a half marathon. So I had about 2.5, 3 miles left to go. And if you drop below a certain pace, the slagging wagon picks you up. I wasn't ready mentally, physically. I was in a relationship. The person I fell in love with that ultimately ended up breaking my heart. And we were just, I wasn't ready. And we broke up a few months later, and I needed to do something to heal my head and heal my heart. And so one day I just pulled my dusty running shoes out. I hadn't run in about a year, and just said, I don't know how far I'm going to go. I don't care what my pace is. I'm not even going to wear my running watch. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to create a playlist of my songs that talk to my soul. And I'm just going to go. And I would be on the Greenway, which a good chunk of the Greenway that I would run on was near a busy street. So people could see me. It wasn't like I was like in some secluded area. And I'd be screaming Lizzo on the top of my lungs, that I do deserve to feel good as hell. And people probably thought I was nuts running, but I finally, after like 10 years, found a love for running, and it became kind of my mental therapy. It's my time. It helps me clear my head. Some days I have goals, to get a certain distance or things like that. And sometimes it's just to clear my head. And so now I have a very different outlook. Now at about mile 20, when I was running the marathon, I probably wasn't saying nice things, but for the most part, I do pretty good with it.
So I have to admit, I really do admire your persistence.
Oh, well, thank you.
And your tenacity.
Thanks. A lot of people are like, oh, I would only run if I'm being chased. And I was like, I agree for a lot of that, but I just found this level of clarity. And then I ended up finding a run group of people. Runners are very, in general, very good people to be around. They're very encouraging. And, and I found this amazing group, and that's led me to want to create a group of my own for women specifically of all body types, to have a group that they can feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And accepted
And not judged. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be very extroverted, and if something's bothering me, I'll hold it inside. But I know how hard it is to walk into that class or, workout class or that group or something and I've been many times the largest person in the room. I joined an outdoor cycling, and I hate cycling more than running at the time. And I was trying to train for a triathlon, and literally their title had the word slow in it. They were the slow spokes. They went up the first hill and they were gone. I had just moved to the area a few years before, didn't know the bike trails. I literally just turned around crying and went to my car. And I never want anyone to feel that way, and just come to a place where they can feel accepted. And maybe it's just to get out and exercise. Maybe it is to lose weight. Maybe it's for mental clarity, but then be able to check their own goals.
So now I want you to talk about your surgery. When did you decide to have the surgery, and how did this impact your life from where we started at the very beginning of sitting in that airplane seat and up until this time, like right now, all of a sudden you're in love with running, you do it, you're starting a group, you're doing some incredible things to help other people. And we'll talk about that too, because you do have a 90-day plan that you help people find their own path. But where did the surgery fit in, and how did that, because that's some pretty invasive, intrusive type of surgery.
Yeah. So for me, I felt lost, right? I felt like I needed a tool. I kind of look at my journey as like a toolbox, and I have all these different tools in my toolbox. Maybe one tool is running, and one tool is my surgery, and one tool is support from friends and family. So I kind of look at all these different tools, and when I say I have tried everything, I have tried everything. I was on a liquid fast. I did Weight Watchers several times. I went an entire summer where I would check into a hospital once a week for a meeting, and we wouldn't eat. It was just a liquid diet, the shakes and stuff like that. And it was doctor supervised. But so when I say I have tried everything, I have tried it. And I didn't know what else to do. And so I thought, well, let me explore this route. And there's several different types of surgery. And I knew there was one that wasn't right for me. It's right for a lot of people, but it wasn't right for me. And that was gastric bypass. That's where they reroute the stomach. And there's a lot of, you could have different side effects and stuff, everything you could have side effects from, but it was a little bit more invasive for me than what I wanted. And then there was the lap band, but that wasn't enough, right? It was a little bit slower process. So I kind of found this thing in the middle, this happy median called Gastric Sleeve. And it was essentially they take your stomach and they just chop part of it off. They don't reroute anything or anything like that. They just take it off. So they make your stomach smaller. But I decided that if I was going to go through this and take all this time off of work and, after I had it, I would put a bedroom pillow on my belly and then put my seatbelt on. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to protect my belly at that point. I was going to take the surgeon's word for gospel. Whatever he told me, I was going to listen to, and I was going to be his star patient, because this was a big thing. And that's when I say people are like, oh, it's such an easy way out. And it's like, it wasn't, it wasn't. I had to have a 2-week liquid fast before it. I didn't eat solid food for, I don't know, a month or something, because your stomach's healing. It's got stitches and staples. You can't eat it. I said I lived on sugar-free popsicle and sugar-free Jello and broth and things like that. So it was a lot of work, and I'd have to get up and walk so I didn't get blood clots. So that was kind of that, probably about, what year is it? 2020. I think that was this year. It was 6 years ago, this September. And so I lost a lot of weight really quickly. I exercised even more. I did all of that. And now I'm in that place where now it's fine tuning.
Mhm.
You know, I had my gallbladder out, emergency gallbladder surgery. So there's a lot of foods I can't eat. I deal with some other things, but now we've noticed that my weight is just kind of stuck. I've put a little weight on during quarantine, and now I realized I have adrenal fatigue. So you just have to keep up with your body constantly. And if you're putting on a little bit of weight, or things are stuck or not, sitting in, you're eating right, you have to look to see what other things are wrong,
Mhm.
instead of just giving up and being frustrated.
Mhm. Or just accepting, well, this is just my body and I'm just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. And at some point that may be that, but if you don't feel comfortable in your own skin, then it's probably not that,
Mhm.
and, I have no qualms to think I'll ever be a size 2 or a size 4. I'm a size 12 right now, and I'd be happy at an 8 or a 10. That's a perfectly great size for me. And there's a lot of people who would look and say, an 8 or a 10, wow, that's too big for me. Well, that's okay. We're all set up a little bit different. We all feel a little bit different. And for me, that would be a great goal.
Mhm.
And I would be coming, like I said, my original size was a size 24. So that's a big
Oh,
difference.
wow. Now, if you don't mind, I want to touch a little bit about on your love life. And you don't have
Yes.
to go into a whole lot of detail if you don't want to, but it pretty much was disastrous.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I had two relationships that really defined me, and they're very, very different. My marriage, I was very overweight when I met my ex-husband. He was overweight, and I think we found a strong friendship. We found comfort in each other, and we made each other's lifestyle acceptable.
Mhm.
I talk about the overeating and the binge eating, and when we were looking to buy our first house together, we were trying to trim back some of the expenses, and we realized, on top of buying groceries, which we never made the food, we were spending $1,500 to $1,700 a month on fast food.
Ooh.
Our life revolved around junk food, and whether it was fast food or restaurants, because we didn't have any children. So when we got home from work, we could go out to dinner and stuff like that, or we would eat on the couch, and then I'd pass out and he'd play video games. So we had a good friendship. We had no affection, no romance, no intimacy. So when I started losing the weight, and he had stayed, he hadn't lost any weight, I tried to put myself out there and was very boldly rejected. And that was kind of the final straw. And so we got divorced. And then on the reverse side, I met my ex-boyfriend, and it was so intense, and I was looking my best. I was probably my version of a 9 out of 10. I'm not saying out of all women, but as good as I'm going to get. Right. And so I looked pretty good during this time. I also had a tummy tuck from like extra skin. They took off 16 pounds of extra skin and fat on my tummy tuck. And so I was feeling like $1,000,000. And the best way I could describe it is how I described it in the book. I craved him like a drug. And that wasn't healthy either. So when I started putting on a little bit of weight, and I was working a ton of hours, I owned a business, and he found someone else that
Mm.
met his needs more than I could. And that's when I decided that I really just needed to focus on me and figure out, because at this point I had a business. My finances were all over the place. My weight was up because I was working 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. I would just swing
Jeez.
by McDonald's to get a cheeseburger on the way home because it was the only thing open. And so I had to figure out how to have that balance. And that's what I started this 90 days, and I wrote the book about it, and I continue to do now, over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Couple of things I did want to just say about that, because of course you go into a lot more detail in the book, but it's interesting because it was like you were always looking for love or romance and unconditional love, which of course you got in the
Mm-hmm.
form of your dog. Let's talk
Yes.
about your
Yes.
dogs. Your first pug, Bean, and then this one, Charlie. But it was almost like the person that really you needed the acceptance and the love from more than anybody else was yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, right? I've always equated how thin I was or how heavy I was with how pretty I was, how people should treat me, and I remember one of my really good friends, one of my best friends, roommate in college, would be like, stop, you don't have to be skinny for people to like you, but I had equated that if you were thin, whatever that version of thin meant, people would be nicer to you and like you more. And it's crazy because you'll actually hear supermodels who are obviously very, very thin talk about how bullied they were because they were awkward looking because they were so thin and they were lanky and, their features were, because if you ever look at a supermodel, a lot of them have really, especially when they're little and they're growing into their features. And so I had always equated it with that. And that's when I really had to sit down and I had to learn to be in my own peace. Because when I got separated, it was very quickly that I started dating. And because I had been done in that marriage for years, it was just a formality, right? And so I had just moved on very, very quickly and I was out dating. I think at one point I had 38 first dates in 30 days. Sometimes I was doing I was doing a coffee date and a dinner date or a lunch date and a, bowling date or something. And they were almost all horrendous. And so I talk about that a little bit in the book, but yeah, it wasn't really until that breakup that I really learned to be okay by myself, be okay in the silence, and be okay in my own world.
And in your own skin.
And in my own skin. And, it's a really hard conversation to have because there's all these conversations and thoughts around addiction. And a lot of people will disagree that body dysmorphia or in food, sugar, there's an addiction to it. They just think it's something you shouldn't think about. It's something, but I don't know. I've never been someone who's addicted to drugs or alcohol. So I can't speak from that. But what I can speak from is I struggle every day with my body. And this isn't something that just goes away overnight. You have those moments. And some days you have good days, you have bad days. But for me, my addiction is food and my addiction sugar. And when I was a smoker for 10 years, when I quit smoking, I just didn't have to go to the gas station anymore or go in. I just, went to the pump. I didn't have to. And I was able to cut that out of my life. I stopped going to restaurants and bars because back in the day, you actually used to be able to smoke in bars and restaurants. And I would stop going so I wasn't around it. So I was able to clear that out of my life. But I still have to eat. You still have to eat to survive. And that is where, with my addiction, it's so hard because I try to stay on the perimeter of the store, vegetables and fruits and things like that. But, I have to walk up and down the aisles with the frozen pancakes and sugar and the candy aisle. And then you're waiting for your turn and all that candy's there. And it's a constant conversation at the store of nope, you don't need SpaghettiOs. Nope, you don't need mac and cheese. Nope, you don't. And it's constant. And it's hard because I have to use my addiction to fuel my life as well as, apparently I just set off my Alexa. Whatever I said just set her off. But I still have to use my addiction.
That's really interesting what you said about even going to the grocery store, because I had heard that before, but I hadn't thought about it in a very long time, is staying in the periphery, staying in the outer aisles, because it's in the more central aisles that they pack the really bad stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and you have to go sometimes in the baking aisle for almond flour and stuff. And those are triggers for me. And I know that I used to keep chocolate chips in my freezer and I would go grab a handful of chocolate chips and stuff like that. So it's or the spices aisle, or I need vegetable oil or something like that, or avocado oil or something. So I've had to learn how to very strategically plan my list so I can get in and out of those areas very quickly.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about is it the 90-day plan?
Yeah. So I figured out that there was, personally for me, and it just started out for me, and I posted on Instagram and somebody's like, this is a great idea. That's how it goes. And
right.
I figured out there's 5 areas of your life that cause the most stress. But if they're done correctly, they can create the most happiness. Right. And so I came up with this idea of an I am journey where you think about things that are impactful, achievable, and measurable. And they focus in on the 5 goals, which are health and fitness, career, love, finances, and then self-love or self-care. So love and self-care are different. Love is in an intimate relationship or friendships and stuff, where self is within yourself. And what I decided to do was, I knew that these were all out of whack. And I decided, well, this is way too much for me to conquer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break my life into 90-day segments. 30 days seemed too short, and anything more than that just seemed like, oh, it's going to take forever. So I decided to break my life into 90-day segments and focus on no more than 3 of those areas at once. And I would repeat cycles as needed, or I would remove them after the 90 days if I completed it. So like the first one was health and fitness, finances, and self-care. And I got my finances all figured out, so I didn't need to repeat that on the second cycle. I took a break from it, and then I kind of did it a little bit more in depth. And then I thought, self-care, I'll just get manicures and pedicures and get a facial and I'm done. And that wasn't it either. That's where I learned to be with myself and in the peace, and then the health and fitness piece. So what I do in this 90 days is I give you some goal setting, some planning. I have on my website too some trackers, like financial trackers, meditation trackers, different things like that you can purchase as well. But the book actually has a sample of the 90-day plan, which is free on the website. But people are like, oh, I messed up, I'm going to start over. I was like, no. It's just your 90 days. You don't get to start over. You don't get to start over in life. We can't just be like, oh, it's January 1 again. And because I think if that was the case, we all would have cashed in 2020 and started right back over. So, I mean, and so that was the whole concept of it was, no, good, bad, or indifferent. This is your plan, and stick to it. And it's broken down into daily and weekly tasks, and putting some time, maybe 10, 15 minutes a week, into investing in planning your next week and things like that. And I don't give you meal plans or anything like that, right? You have to figure out what's right for you. And maybe it's just walking for 10 minutes each day, but that's a huge goal for you. So you just have to kind of figure it out from there.
Well, the whole plan is to figure out how you can improve yourself. And if you're making a mistake, or if you slip up or something, that's part of the journey. You don't just say, oh, I'm going to erase that and start all over again and do it better this time. It's part of understanding where you are making your mistakes, or where you can change something and make some improvements in your life.
That's exactly it. Somebody had once said, just because you trip doesn't mean you have to throw yourself down the stairs. And that's always stuck with me. And it's like, yeah, that's the whole point of the 90 days is, if you're going to live in pure perfection, at some point it's not going to happen. Whether it's day 60, day 90, day 200, and you're in your second cycle or third cycle or whatever, it's going to happen. So this gives you the idea of letting, in other words, failure be okay. You know, I at work, we always talk about fail quick and move on. Right. And so that's kind of that thought process of give yourself grace.
Well, it's through your failures that you really learn.
Absolutely.
So if you don't make a mistake, how are you going to change?
1,000%. You can't get any better. What do they say? It's progress, not perfection.
Well, perfection's overrated anyhow. It's kind of boring.
It's very boring. And who even knows what perfect is? You know,
exactly.
One person's perfect is not another person's perfect. So you have to find your version of what you're happy with for your level of perfection.
So how can people find you?
So my website is justmedinamarie.com. And then my Instagram handle is @justmedinamarie. And you can find me on those and follow along through my shenanigans.
And do they get the book on the website, or go to Amazon, or where can they find your book? Because it is a great read. It's a great read.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you could go directly on Amazon and order it. If you go to the website, there's a link that will take you to Amazon, and it gets sent right out. You can order it on Kindle, or you can order a paperback copy. We did record it. I'm still working on getting some of that worked out, but it will be for audio at some point. But yeah, so you can do Kindle or paperback.
Are you narrating it yourself?
When we did the book, I read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me 7 hours to read.
That's-
It does not take that long. I mean, but it's a very quick read, but it took me about 7 hours to verbalize it.
So was it hard to read your own book? Did you go through the emotional roller coaster all over again?
You know, by the time I got to recording it, I had read it so many times that not as much. You know, it was, I think because I had someone else in the studio, I had the earphones on, I was trying to even find those inflections. But I think by the time I recorded, I had probably read the books cover to cover 10 or 12 times, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and because there's edits and it's really hard to just edit a book. You kind of have to like read the chapter before, read the chapter over or something. And so if you dig down deep enough on my Facebook page, which is Dina Marie, just me, Dina Marie too, you can find me doing a book reading because we did a virtual book launch because of COVID. And, you know, by that time I'd read it so many times. I think the first time I read it, it was really hard for me to read.
Mm-hmm.
It was, a lot came back because it's different writing a book and reading the book.
Yes, it
So when I
is.
was writing, it was, you know, I didn't write it in order. I wrote it as the thoughts came to me. Mm-hmm. So in my brain, it was really choppy. And then when I actually sat down and like read it as a full story, it was an emotional read for me.
Well, do you have any final thoughts or any final pearls of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience?
You know, I think the whole thing is you just have to find the best version of you that's going to make you the happiest, whatever that means, in love, in life, in friendships, in weight, in health, in your career. You know, we spend so much time worrying about other people and what people think. And I know I've spent so much time being the person on the sideline holding all the purses at an event because I was too worried about what everyone else would think of me to have fun. And I missed out on a lot. So if you would do nothing else, try to stop that, let loose, be you, and embrace the you that you are. If there's only one thing you do, just embrace you. If we were all the same, this would be a really boring world.
Really great words of wisdom. And Dina, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate having you here. You're so much fun to talk to, and you have such an amazing story. And I just want to, stand here. And I mean, I am applauding you. I am just, you go, girl. You have just made an incredible transformation with your life, and you're doing such a great job of helping other people. I don't know if you even realize how many people you're able to reach with that story and with your practical tips.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving me a chance to share with your audience, and hopefully somebody does take one little nugget out of it, and maybe it will make them be able to smile a little extra. So I do appreciate you allowing me to be here.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you all for listening, and do reach out to Dina. She's an amazing person, as you can tell. If you do have any questions or you need a little bit of inspiration, send her an email, contact her, get her book, and just remember to self-acceptance, self-love is such an important part of not only being a strong, healthy person, but our personal empowerment. And that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.